I want to talk to Sven, who's calling in from Washington. Hey, Sven, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
I am well. How are you?
Doing awesome. What can we talk to you about?
Yeah, so I just was thinking lately about how atheism and I guess more definitively skepticism would lead to conformity and the way that like religious doctrine does. Do you think it like limits free thought or free thinkers because you want to follow kind of like the follow-up of the last caller, empiricism only as the only way of truth?
Yeah, but you did hear that I granted a priori knowledge or any types of conceptual knowledge though, right? So it's not empiricism.
I did.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be empiricism.
So you do believe it?
What's that, Sven?
Dan, would you agree? Do you not think that? Dan, would you agree? Do you think that skepticism wouldn't lead to a limiting free thought and free thinkers because it only follows one path? Or
there's different types of skepticism and there's different types of atheism. So it's hard to say. I think, colloquially, when people are talking about this, they'd be like, oh, atheists can get together and just be just as wrong about something as anybody else, which I think, yes, that's true. I don't doubt that a Facebook group of atheists can all be really critical about something and not fully understand a situation, because there is kind of a culture that develops when you're with a group of people for so long that if you have a disdain for one topic, then suddenly everybody else has a disdain for it. And, like those kind of cultural memes do happen. And we see it in the atheist community. I mean, I'm on Twitter. I see this stuff happen. And I happen to disagree with a lot of my fellow atheists on a lot of things. And so I know that like anybody, if they're a part of a group, can find themselves agreeing to stuff just because the group is agreeing to it, and maybe not because they're using their own skepticism. That's going to be true for any group. But I'd like to think that, those of us who do identify as atheists, I'd like to think that we'd have a propensity to be more skeptical, to be more open-minded. I know that's not true. I know that we're just as susceptible, but I like to think we at least talk about these methodologies more and talk about how we're coming to these conclusions more. I think that's true, at least for the groups that I hang out with. So even if I think, oh, these people aren't being skeptical about it at all, I can at least talk to somebody about it, and I think they're going to be more receptive to it than, say, if I'm going to talk to a Christian and say, hey, I'm not sure about this whole Christianity thing. So yeah, I don't know. I see where you're coming from, but at the end of the day, yeah, I think that I think we're okay as long as we continue to grow and evolve. I mean, look at the atheist community 10 years ago versus now, just like online and in general. I think they're just a lot more open and a lot more just chill with stuff, especially as new political ideologies form, new understandings of the world happen, and the world changes. I don't know, the atheist label changes along with it, I guess.
Yeah, I guess definitely in the political landscape, you could see a diversity in thought. I guess I've called in before about the soul, and we talked for a while. I just think, the other day it was shocking to hear that Matt Dillahunty said he didn't really know about a lot about panpsychism. And it's just like I've also heard like that the soul is the most dead topic in philosophy today, but when I listen to philosophies around the world from England, I guess just England here, but there's a lot of thought and a lot of talk in philosophy about the immaterial and the supernatural, and there's just a lot of thought out there, and I feel like skepticism just wants to shut a lot of that out. When I just don't feel like it's a dead topic, that there's a consciousness in the soul.
Well, so, and I think that's like when I'm talking to John, we say like a methodological naturalist, and Matt would, I think, agree to that term. I think you've heard him use it. That is right there is an admission that we're not saying that the supernatural doesn't exist. We're not the example I use is like we have a deck of cards and all the cards are natural, and then we have the one kind of supernatural. We're going to use that to explain something. It's going to remain on the table. We're not going to take it off. So that doesn't get you there. But when I want to make sure I heard you right at the beginning, you were saying like the skepticism kind of gives you this level of doctrine that religion has, but dogma tells you that it is the case, and that you should not, apply any other type of reasoning to it. You shouldn't be skeptical of it. So you're talking about two different ends of the stick, from my perspective, at least.
Yeah, it's funny you say reasoning and rationality because I feel like they are the exact opposite. And so it's like I feel like there's a lot of people who go from religion to spiritual and not to atheism because I feel like there is a lot of gray area in the consciousness and the soul topic. I don't think it's...
I can tell you my hypothesis on why that's the case.
Sometimes I feel atheism feel like empiricism is... So they want an empirical evidence of the soul. Like you're asking, like where do we measure it? But like it's not a material thing, so it's not. You obviously can't get to it through empirical means.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I get that, but that's why we have kind of deduction and these types of things that aren't necessarily, the philosophical armchair, so to speak. Like we can reason that way. This is why this is kind of not. You don't see like strict empiricists anymore. It's why it's not. That's not what this is. We've kind of taken that rationality and empiricism, and we've realized within there that you can deduct, and that's not a problem.
Yeah.
I just would say the reason that I think my hypothesis or my conjecture, at least on that, is that people are just very emotionally attached and not attached to like, so for example, I'm a determinist. I want free will to be true. Like more than anything, I want to know I author like actions, right? But I take my emotions out of these decisions because I know the universe, or at least it seems to indicate through my experience that the universe does not care about me. It has been doing its thing long before I came along. So anything that I conjecture or I want to think or this wishful thinking, it does not care about how I feel. And the best way for me to live my life is to recognize that and understand, well, if the world's deterministic, it's deterministic. If there's no soul, there's no soul. That to me doesn't make life any less beautiful. In fact, I think it actually, the more we kind of constrain ourselves, I think it's more beautiful. The more finite time I have, the more I'm going to want to spend it with my family and friends and things of that nature, right? So I think I don't know, I like the position better than being open for these things where now you can just be tricked by anybody, I feel like.
Well, I would say this, I agree. If there is a soul and it's immaterial and it's outside of, the empirical realm, then all we could do is just reason about it. But like reason alone still doesn't conclude to me that a soul exists. Like a reason without any kind of evidence or any kind of observation is almost meaningless in that sense, because especially in this case, because again, the soul is hypothetically speaking still interacting with the physical world. It's still having to do things. And so like if we can observe that, if that's something that's happening, again, like if I have a soul and a rock doesn't, there is something different between me and that rock. And whether it's material or not, it's there's a difference. It's like that's still an observation. Like even if I don't like see the spirit molecule that's in me and not in the rock or whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? Like pure reason still doesn't get you there. And I we don't talk about this enough, I think, in the atheist community about what happens to people who do deconstruct from fundamentalism and then just go to a more liberal Christianity, because that is just as common as people becoming atheists, if not more so. I think I mean, if you don't believe me, just check out all the YouTube videos about it, all the podcasts about people who still identify as Christians, but still come to this more kind of liberal, kind of open interpretation. Like we don't talk about that a lot because like we don't get to those conclusions, obviously, but that's happening. That's definitely happening. I guess just atheists, we just kind of, I don't know, we just didn't get there, or we went past it, I guess. Anyway, I hope we answered your questions to your liking there, Sven. We're going to go ahead and get to another caller here, but thanks for calling in. And appreciate you talking to us.
I think you make a good point there, by the way, Dan. It's like, look at a photon, right? We don't, there's a lot of things that you'd be like, someone could armchair deduce, well, what if there's a photon in this thing, right? Yeah. Well, how are we proving that? Well, it's a thing that you're saying is in the physical world. And so we can actually show this, right? And so that's where I feel like earlier, the other call, it seems like we're just trying to sidestep the rigorous testing of science. And you can use the a priori kind of to get there, right? But you're going to have something there that's going to make it tangible. Otherwise, I feel like you can just believe really anything.
Yes, and that's with the caveat, by the way. I understand math is kind of a weird thing because is that just like pure reason? But like the mathematical models we use still only make sense when we're doing observations. When I say 1 + 1 = 2, that says nothing about the physical world. But if I say there's one table and there's another table, and that means there's two tables, I'm making a conclusion about the physical world based on my observations using math, which is like a kind of reasoning. So like, there's going to be those technical caveats there, but hopefully I think people understand what I'm trying to say.